My name is Mara Ellison, 34 years old. On New Year's Eve, I stood in my mother's doorway holding a hot casserole and a hope I should have retired years ago. The house was glowing. Candlelight skating over polished silver, music threading through laughter, wine tilting in glasses, the kind of cozy chaos that used to mean belonging. I counted 10 cars in the driveway and told myself that meant room for us, not a warning I refused to read. Is there a spot for us at the table? I asked, the twins pressed close behind me, fingers warming on the casserole dish through my coat. My dad didn't flinch. Seats are for important people. Mark, leaning by the fireplace like he owned the hearth and the season, grinned. Stand and watch, like always. No one looked up. Plates were full, voices high, and I could feel the twins' eyes burn into my side, trying to translate adult jokes that weren't funny. I put the casserole on the counter, slid my hand down to find Lily's fingers, then Jonah's. We're going, I said softly, and no one told me to stay. Outside, the cold kissed mean. The twins climbed into the back seat, still holding their gift bags, the paper flashing gold every time a porch light winked at us. We ended up in a diner off Route 9, the kind with red vinyl booths and a hand-lettered sign that promised coffee like salvation. A waitress in a glitter headband cooed at the kids and brought chocolate milk with extra whipped cream. The twins ate waffles with ice cream like it was a holiday ritual we'd always planned. We watched fireworks crack open the sky through the windshield. They fell asleep sticky and smiling, their heads tipped toward each other. I sat there listening to the heater whir and thought about my dad's sentence, the way it landed heavier than the snow on the roof. Seats are for important people. The next afternoon around 3, Mark called. Once. Twice. A third time. I let it ring, watched his name bloom and vanish. On the 4th attempt, I answered. He didn't ask how I was, didn't mention the night before. Mara, he said, voice shaking, I need $14,000. Right now. It's life or death. Silence stretched thin with the words he didn't say. Please, I'm sorry. Thank you. I whispered, Happy New Year, Mark. Ask the important people. Then I hung up. 5 minutes later, Mom called, then Natalie, then Dad. Texts stacked like dishes in a sink no one planned to wash. Urgent, urgent, urgent. If he dies, it'll be on your conscience, Natalie finally wrote, the kind of sentence people hurl when they want a quick yes and no accountability later. I didn't answer. I listened to voicemails. Mark sounded ragged in one. Collapsed lung, he said. Uninsured procedure. Hospital wants half up front. He said Mom and Dad couldn't do it, that Natalie had maxed the cards, that this was life or death again, as if repetition could turn pressure into prayer. Then Natalie sent a photo. Mark in a hospital gown, half upright, eyes closed, tubes in his nose, the harsh honesty of overhead lighting flattening his face. Under it, $14,000 or they send him home. I stared at the picture until my phone dimmed. The twins were sprawled on the living room floor, building a castle out of Legos, asking if they could add a dragon. I heard my dad's voice from the night before, the laughter that followed, and then I heard something else, my own heartbeat stepping into a decision. The next morning, I got up early, braided Lily's hair, tied Jonah's laces, and drove them to school. Then I went to the bank. $7,000, half of what he demanded, half of what I could barely spare. It was more than I'd spent on anything that wasn't for my children, and it felt like slicing off a piece of myself to feed a story that refused to end. I wired the money. I called my mother to tell her. She sounded relieved, like a weight she carried for an hour had been lifted, but her voice stayed cold. No, thank you. Just, when is the rest coming? There is no rest, I said. That's it. She hung up. That night, Mark called. His voice was softer, gratitude dressing each syllable. Thank you, Mara. You saved my life. I'll pay you back, I swear, as soon as I'm out. He didn't sound like he was lying. He just sounded like a man who could be sincere and unreliable at the same time. I said, focus on getting better, and let the line go quiet. 2 weeks later, the surgery was posted on Facebook before he told me himself. Natalie crafted a perfect paragraph with hearts and hashtags, steeped in words like miracle and gratitude. We made it through the storm, she wrote. Family is everything. The photos looked like a commercial for resilience. Mark smiling weakly, hands clasped, hospital bracelets gleaming like proof. My name was not there. The money was not there. I was a shadow behind a curtain-side lamp, warming the room and unseen. I gave them time. Told myself recovery is messy, that hospitals are clocks that run on a kind of grief that has no numbers. I waited a few more weeks, then sent a message. Just checking in. Do you know when you'll be able to return the $7,000? Things are getting tight on my end. It was marked seen. No reply. 2 days later, I asked again. Natalie responded almost immediately, the way you answer when the performance has already been written. We're going through a lot. Mark's still out of work. This has been emotionally draining. We hope you can be understanding during this fragile chapter of healing. Then, as if she'd been meaning to ask all along, could I help just a little more with new meds and extra rehab? Only a couple thousand to get us over the hump. That was the click. Not loud, but final. Something in me, something I'd been cushioning with casseroles and gentle text messages, snapped back into place. I wrote 2 words. No more. I could already hear the chorus they'd assemble. Selfish, heartless, bitter, ungrateful. The greatest hits. I pictured the table again, the way everyone had leaned in toward food and laughter while my kids stood behind me like an afterthought. I remembered the diner, the chocolate milk mustaches, the way Lily had fallen asleep holding a gift bag like it was a map back to a place that didn't want her. I wasn't going to fund that erasure anymore. The next morning, my mother texted, I heard you refused to help again. We're all struggling, Mara. Maybe think of someone other than yourself for once. That word, again, landed like a slap, as if the last 7,000 had been a rumor, as if my savings weren't real because I'd used them quietly, without witnesses or applause. I didn't answer. I kept my phone face down and folded laundry with the twins, pairing socks that never stayed together in drawers, but somehow always met back up in the dryer. For dinner, we made pancakes and ate them on the couch, syrup singing on our fingers. Lily asked if we were going back to Grandma's soon. I told her we were building our own New Year's traditions, with seats no one had to audition for. I wanted to believe that no could end a story. But in my family, no is an invitation to push harder. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Natalie stood there holding a box of bakery cookies and wearing the kind of smile you put on when you plan to take it off right after you get what you came for. I opened the door enough for weather and words, not enough for entry. We just want to talk, she said, voice sweetening to hide the aftertaste. We're in a desperate spot. I'm sorry things got tense. She pushed the cookie box forward like a bribe that wanted to be mistaken for kindness. Then she named it $5,000. You have the ability to help. I don't know why you're punishing us. I didn't move, didn't speak. Sometimes silence is the only language manipulators don't know how to translate. I closed the door gently. 2 hours later, Mark called. He didn't ask. He demanded. Told me I owed him. Hinted he'd saved me from worse years ago, whatever that meant. Said family steps up, that if roles were reversed, he'd give me everything. It took everything in me not to laugh. You won't see another cent, I said, and ended the call. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. The text arrived that night, not from Mark, not from Natalie, but from my parents. A family meeting at their house tomorrow night to talk this through like adults. I felt the old gravity tug at me, the memory of every argument I'd tried to win with truth and never did. I should have said no, but I wanted to see just how far they'd go to keep their story intact. I left the twins with the neighbor, drove to the house with my hands at 10 and 2, like the DMV still had a say, and walked into a living room set up like a tribunal. Mom, Dad, Mark, Natalie. No dinner smells, no music. Just fluorescent honesty and shabby carpet and the sense that I was about to be asked to disappear nicely. I sat. I waited. And I decided if they wanted a performance, I'd let them deliver it to a quiet audience who would remember every line. My mother opened the meeting like a manager reviewing an underperforming employee. No greeting, no small talk, just a clipped, "We think it's time you stop holding this money over everyone's head." I let the sentence sit. In the old days, I'd fill the silence, justify, explain, apologize. Tonight, I watched their faces the way a lifeguard watches a pool, calmly, ready to move if someone started drowning in their own story. My father leaned forward, elbows on his knees. It makes no sense that you can't spare a few thousand more. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have a husband to support. He said it like facts on a spreadsheet, as if my life were a calculation he could solve if I just handed over the right variables. Mark's voice cracked in. We carry each other in this family. Natalie opened a notebook with neat columns and colored tabs. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Here are the expenses you're refusing to help with. Co-pays, post-op meds, physical therapy, transportation, lost wages. Itemized empathy, monetized urgency. She slid the notebook to the edge of the table, close enough to smell the ink, but not close enough to hand me any power. I waited for the last page of the performance. It arrived fast. We've decided that the $7,000 you wired was a gift, Natalie said evenly, as if reading a calendar appointment, given the circumstances. Mark nodded as if he'd thought of it, as if gratitude for a gift were blooming in his chest instead of entitlement. My father's eyes flicked to my mother, the agreement, then back to me. This was the trap. Not a chaos trap, a paperwork trap. Rewrite the past so the present owed them less. I looked at the notebook, at the tabs labeled in tidy script, MEDES, PT, MISC, gas, and felt something steely slide into place inside me. You're not asking, I said quietly. You're expecting. The answer is no. They blinked. They were ready for the plea, the justifications, for me to bargain with my own backbone. The one thing they hadn't rehearsed was a sentence that ended without a comma. My mother tried a softer key. Mara, honey, this is a family matter. We will repay you when we can. But sympathy doesn't have a clock. I stood. Sympathy isn't a credit line either. I picked up my coat. We're done here. No one moved to stop me. No one said my name like a rope. I walked out of the house that taught me to love without terms and drove home under a sky that looked like static. The twins were asleep when I checked on them, Lily with one sock off, Jonah snoring in gentle little stutters. I sat on the floor between their doors for a minute like I used to when they were babies, and fevers scared me. My phone buzzed on the hallway table. Another group text. I let it hum itself out. The next morning, I did the thing that turns flammable family drama into something that cannot pretend it's smoke. I called a lawyer. His office smelled like lemon cleaner and paper. He didn't waste my time. Tell me what happened, he said. And I did. Short, factual, unadorned. I handed him a folder. Wire transfer receipt. The message where I told Mom I'd sent it. Mark's voicemail promising repayment. Natalie's texts. The hospital photo with the caption that had made my stomach drop. He read quickly, a pen resting idle in his fingers. This isn't a misunderstanding, he said finally, eyes on the transfer. This is a debt. It's enforceable. Something in my chest relaxed, then bristled. I'd wanted a witness, not a warrior. But maybe the only difference is what you do with the truth after you hear it. We'll begin with a formal demand, he continued. 14 days to repay the $7,000. We'll note the consideration, the request, the promise. We'll keep the tone clean. No heat. No heat, I repeated, and thought about my father's voicemail, the frost that had lived in his voice ever since I learned to talk back. By afternoon, the letter was drafted. Precise and calm, a surgeon's cut. He sent it certified. I took the elevator down from 10 floors of new choices and stood on the sidewalk breathing air that didn't require permission. I expected the reply to come from Mark, maybe from Natalie behind his keyboard. It came from my father. He didn't recognize the tone for what it was, an attempt to end this without blood, and mistook it for a challenge. His email to my lawyer accused me of weaponizing a moment of crisis, of tearing the family apart for money, a word he paired with me like a curse. He suggested that if I kept going, I'd regret it. The line wasn't explicit enough for police and more than explicit enough for a daughter. My lawyer forwarded it to me with one sentence. We proceed. That night, I drew a bath I didn't soak in and watched the phone on the counter like it might hatch. A call from an unknown number slid across the screen. I almost let it die. Something in me said answer. Hey, the voice said. Careful, familiar. It's Ryan. My youngest brother sounded the same and not the same. Oregon in his vowels. Some newer steadiness under the old shyness. We hadn't spoken in a year. Work, distance, deliberate neutrality. He never joined fights. He just refused to be recruited, which in our family felt like betrayal in its own right. I heard what's going on, he said. I want you to know. I've seen everything. I believe you. You're not wrong. I didn't speak right away. The sentence opened a door in my chest I hadn't known was still locked. When I could breathe, I asked, "How did you see everything?" He hesitated. "They added me to a private group chat before Mark's surgery, to keep the family in the loop. Everyone except you," he exhaled. "I didn't say much in it, I just watched." A pause, then the kind of kindness that hurts because it arrives late. "They've been talking about you for weeks." "Thanks," he said. "At first it was little jabs, then—" He trailed. I took screenshots. I closed my eyes. "Read me one." He did. "Natalie. She's too proud to ask for help but expects to be included. Exhausting." Mark. "Let her stew. She'll cave. She always does. My mother. She should be grateful we even let her show up." The words didn't surprise me. What surprised me was how easy they sounded in his voice, as if he were reading a grocery list, not because he agreed, but because contempt had become that normal in their mouths. "Do you want the screenshots?" he asked. "I can send them." "Yes," I said, and my voice didn't shake. "Send them." They arrived in a minute, a slow cascade of proof no one intended me to have. I didn't scroll. I stared at the first one until the blue bubbles blurred. A thought rose clear above the noise. Proof is a mirror. They didn't want to see themselves. "They're panicking now," Ryan said quietly. "Mark's lawyer reached out to me. They want to settle quietly. No court." I looked at the bathroom tiles like they might offer counsel. Quiet had been my currency for years. I'd spent it until my pockets turned out empty, and I still owed more. "No," I said. "No settlement. We go on record." A beat. "Okay," he said, and I could hear him nodding, even across states. "I'll be there when you go to court. Just say the word." After we hung up, I sat on the floor and let the phone cool in my hand. The twins knocked on the door to ask if bath time could include boats. I said yes, too quickly, too brightly, and built a navy from plastic cups. Later, when the apartment went soft and quiet, I opened my desk drawer. 2 folders waited. Receipts, bulging now, and another I'd labeled Resolve. Into Resolve, I slipped a printout of the demand letter and the first screenshot Ryan had sent. "Let her stew. She'll cave. She always does." I pressed the folder shut until the cardboard warmed under my palms. I thought of the diner on New Year's Eve, of Lily's chocolate mustache and Jonah's head on her shoulder, of fireworks stitched across a winter sky as if light could mend anything. I thought of the table at my mother's house, the candles mirrored in perfect silverware, the way my father's sentence had cleaved the night in two. Seats are for important people. I wasn't going to beg for a chair anymore. I was bringing my own. When the court notice arrived, date, time, room, with the kind of name only a courthouse loves, I didn't feel fear. I felt the same stillness I'd felt the moment I slid the casserole onto my mother's counter and took my children's hands. A choice is quieter than a fight, but it moves the earth more. I texted Ryan the date. He wrote back a single word. There. I put the notice in Resolve, turned off the desk lamp, and stood at the window. The city breathed in little lights. Behind the glass, my reflection held her ground. Tired, yes, but not bent. Tomorrow, they would try new tactics. They always did. But the story had left their mouths and entered the record. And records don't apologize for being accurate. I locked the door, checked the twins, and slept without dreaming. The courthouse letter sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I touched it again. I'd memorized the details, the date, the room number, the case code that looked like nonsense, until I realized it was just me versus the people who raised me. The twins used it as a doodle pad, drawing stick figures and stars on the envelope. I let them. Maybe it was better that way. Better that it looked like nothing more than paper, not a declaration that my entire childhood home would be cross-examined under fluorescent lights. My lawyer called midweek. "We've drafted the final demand letter," he said. His voice was crisp, clipped, the kind of tone that carried no family baggage. "Delivered and signed for yesterday. If they don't respond, we file." "They'll respond," I said, though I didn't know if I meant it. They always responded. Just not with accountability. And right on cue, an email arrived that evening. Not from Mark, not from Natalie, from my father. He didn't bother with formality. "This is disgusting," it began. He accused me of weaponizing a medical emergency, said I was tearing the family apart for money. He wrote that I was cold, selfish, that I'd regret this. His words were sharp but lazy, the same script he'd used since I was a child. How dare I draw boundaries? How dare I believe my pain had the right to speak? I read it once. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer without a comment. His reply was simple. We proceed. That night, the apartment was too quiet. The twins had drifted to sleep with their heads pressed together, whispers about school projects and whose turn it was to pick Saturday pancakes. I poured a glass of water, stared at my reflection in the kitchen window, and thought about how many times I had let his tone stop me. How many years I'd mistaken fear for obedience. Not anymore. The next day, my phone rang, an Oregon area code. My first instinct was spam, but something told me to answer. Hey, the voice said, hesitant, warm. It's Ryan, my youngest brother, the one who'd moved west, who'd chosen distance over drowning. We hadn't spoken in a year. I heard what's going on, he said. I just want you to know. I believe you. You're not wrong. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my lungs burned. How do you know what's going on? He sighed. They added me to a private group chat before Mark's surgery to keep me in the loop. Everyone was in it except you. I leaned against the counter. My hands trembled. And I stayed quiet, watched. I thought maybe they'd calm down, but they didn't. It got worse. I saved screenshots. The silence between us buzzed. Read me one, I whispered. He hesitated, then, Natalie. She's too proud to ask for help, but expects to be included. Exhausting. Mark. Let her stew. She'll cave. She always does. He swallowed. Mom. She should be grateful we even let her show up. The words didn't pierce. They confirmed. They confirmed every cold glance, every seat withheld, every laugh at my expense. Proof, finally, in black and white. I'll send them, Ryan said, all of them. Within minutes, my phone pinged with image after image, blue bubbles stacked like bricks, each one heavier than the last. I didn't scroll. I just stared at the first. My own mother reducing me to a trespasser in the house I grew up in. Ryan's voice was soft. They're panicking now. Mark's lawyer reached out. They want to settle quietly. No court. I laughed. Sharp. Humorless. Quiet had been my role all my life. Quiet at the table, quiet in the corner, quiet when they took and took. No, I said firmly. We go on record. He paused, then, okay, I'll be there, whatever you need. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, the glow of the phone fading against my palm. Proof had always been a mirage in my family. Memories rewritten, debts rebranded as gifts, hurt disguised as love. But now I had it. Screenshots, transfers, voicemails, receipts that couldn't be laughed off over wine. The next morning, I printed everything. The bank statement showing the wire transfer, Mark's voicemail thanking me, promising repayment, Natalie's texts asking for more, my mother's message accusing me of selfishness. And now the group chat screenshots Ryan had risked becoming an outsider himself to send. I slid each sheet into a folder labeled Reclaim. At night, after the twins had gone to bed, I'd sit at the dining table and flip through the folder like it was a storybook. Not because I wanted to relive it, but because I needed to remind myself I wasn't imagining it. Gaslighting loses power when the truth is printed in your hands. My father called twice that week. I didn't answer. His voicemails were colder than ever. You're destroying this family, he growled. For money, for pride. Do you even hear yourself? I did. And for the first time, I wasn't ashamed of the sound. The following Monday, my lawyer confirmed the filing date. They can try to settle, but if you're certain, we'll see them in court. I'm certain, I said. My voice didn't waver. The twins noticed the shift in me before I admitted it to myself. Mom, you don't look tired anymore, Jonah said one morning while tying his shoes. You look taller. I smiled, kissed the top of his head. Maybe I am. Days folded into weeks. I worked, cooked, helped with homework, all while a quiet drumbeat pulsed beneath everything. The court date, waiting like a storm I was ready to stand in. The night before, I laid out clothes that felt like armor without looking like armor. Simple, clean, not flashy. I didn't need to perform, I just needed to show up. I texted Ryan the time. His reply came fast. I'll be there, promise. I placed the folder labeled Reclaim beside my purse. The twins' backpacks were ready for school, their lunchboxes filled. Life went on, even when the past was preparing to sit across from you in a courtroom. I turned off the lights, stood by the window, and looked out at the city. The streets glowed with quiet movement. Somewhere across town, my family was likely rehearsing their lines, rewriting history into something palatable. But for once, the story wouldn't be told in their kitchen, under their roof, with their rules. It would be told under oath, and that changed everything. Court is not like television. There are no gasps from the gallery, no grand speeches timed with swelling violins. It's a building that smells faintly of dust and bureaucracy, with ceilings too low to inspire reverence and chairs too stiff to comfort. And yet, as I stepped through the glass doors that morning, folder in hand, I felt taller than I had in years. Ryan was waiting just outside the security checkpoint, fidgeting with his tie like it was strangling him. He'd never been one for suits, never been one for confrontation either, but there he was. He caught my eye, gave me a small nod, and fell into step beside me. No words, just presence. Sometimes that's enough. My lawyer met us by the elevators. "We're in room 2C, he said briskly. "Simple matter. Present the transfer, the promise, the failure to repay. Shouldn't take long." I nodded, though my pulse was a drumline. When we entered, Mark was already there. Natalie perched beside him, all sharp edges and stiff posture, a blazer that screamed competence, but eyes that darted too fast. My parents sat behind them. My father's jaw was locked, his glare burning holes in the table. My mother avoided my eyes, her hands folded neatly in her lap as if she were in church. The judge entered without fanfare, a man who looked like he'd seen every kind of petty cruelty families could inflict on one another. He called the case, my name against my brother's. Just names on paper, but the weight of our entire history sat on those syllables. My lawyer began. Calm, steady, unflinching. He laid out the wire transfer receipt. $7,000 from me to Mark. He played the voicemail where Mark thanked me, promised repayment. He read Natalie's text requesting more, her message declaring the money a gift. He passed the printed screenshots to the judge, each one a blueprint of betrayal. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My proof spoke louder than any trembling voice could. Mark's lawyer tried to spin. He said it was a misunderstanding between siblings, heightened emotions during a medical crisis. He tried to paint me as vindictive, weaponizing compassion. But when the judge asked Mark directly, "Did you tell your sister you would repay the money?" He hesitated only a second before saying, "Yes." The room shifted. Natalie's face drained, then flushed scarlet. My father's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. My mother closed her eyes. The judge's voice was even. "Then this is not a gift. This is a loan. I find in favor of the plaintiff. Repayment of $7,000 plus penalties and filing fees. 30 days. And that was it. No gavel slam, no cinematic pause, just the end of a sentence that had taken me my whole adult life to write. Outside, Ryan walked with me to my car. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, softly, "You gave them every chance. They chose this." I nodded, though the weight in my stomach wasn't triumph. It was something heavier, more complicated. I had won, yes, but winning against your own blood feels like amputating a limb that's been poisoned. Necessary, life-saving, and devastating. 28 days later, the wire transfer hit my account, from Natalie's name, not Mark's. No note, no apology, just numbers sliding across a screen, antiseptic and cold. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Short, final. "You've made your decision. So have we. Please don't contact us again." My father unfollowed me on every platform. Mark blocked my number. Natalie posted a vague quote about snakes wearing family masks, dripping with subtext so obvious, even strangers would know where it was aimed. I didn't reply. I didn't rage. I just sat in the quiet, letting the silence fill spaces I hadn't realized were empty. In the days that followed, something unexpected bloomed. Relief. The constant tension in my shoulders eased. The fear of my phone lighting up with demands evaporated. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next emergency that only I could solve. But grief was there too. Grief for the family I thought I had, the family I wanted my children to know, the family that could have said thank you, or sorry, or even lied kindly. Instead, they'd erased me and then punished me for refusing to disappear. Ryan stayed. He came over the weekend after the ruling with pizza and a new board game for the twins. He helped me fix a cabinet door, watched a movie with us. He didn't bring up court, didn't dissect the silence that now hung over us all. He just showed up, like family is supposed to. One night, after the twins were asleep, we sat on the porch, the winter air sharp against our skin. He looked at me and said, "You never stopped being one of us. They just couldn't handle that you stopped needing them." That was when I cried. Not because I lost them, but because I finally understood. Love that depends on silence isn't love at all. Months slipped by, in a rhythm I hadn't known before, steady, almost gentle. The courthouse, the accusations, the legal letters, they all felt like another lifetime. I kept waiting for a flare-up, another demand, another threat, but the silence stayed. At first, it unnerved me. Then, slowly, it became a balm. Ryan became a fixture in our lives. Every other weekend, sometimes more. He'd show up with groceries or tools, or just his quiet company. The twins grew to expect him, racing to the door whenever they heard his knock. He didn't come with demands, or guilt, or scorekeeping, just presence. One Saturday, as we spread pizza boxes across the coffee table, Jonah grinned and said, "Uncle Ryan's part of our team." And Ryan, eyes shining just slightly, answered, "Best team I've ever been on." It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was real. With the money finally back in my account, I allowed myself to breathe differently. I dipped into my savings, stretched every dollar, and moved us into a slightly bigger apartment. Nothing glamorous, but for the first time, the twins each had their own room. Jonah picked blue walls, Lily picked yellow. We painted together, laughter smudged in streaks of color across our arms. It felt like staking a claim, not just to space, but to dignity, to a future that didn't require anyone else's permission. Work picked up. I leaned into freelance contracts, budgeting carefully. Hard work, yes, but it was mine. Struggle feels different when it builds something, instead of draining you. Then, one afternoon, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a folded money order for $1,000. In the corner, tiny handwriting. From me, not her. Mark's scrawl, unmistakable. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't enough to cover what had happened, not nearly. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing either. It lived in that gray space where broken people sometimes hover, too proud to say sorry, too haunted to stay silent. I didn't cash it. I tucked it into the drawer with the other records. Proof of something, though I still don't know what. The holidays came. No cards, no calls, no invitations. I didn't expect any. What I did get was Ryan on Christmas Eve. He brought gifts for the twins, Legos and books, and stayed until midnight, helping them build and read until they fell asleep under the glow of the tree. Then we sat on the couch, peppermint tea in hand, snow feathering down outside. "Why didn't you pick a side before?" I asked quietly, not accusing, just curious. He looked down at his mug. "Because I thought I didn't have to. I thought we were all on the same team." He lifted his eyes to mine. I was wrong, but I won't make that mistake again. I didn't cry then, but later that night, alone, watching my children curled up safe, I let the tears come. Not for what I lost, for what I finally understood. Sometimes closure isn't reconciliation. Sometimes closure is distance. Sometimes closure is choosing who sits at your table. On New Year's Eve, I set the table for 3, me, Lily, and Jonah. Ryan joined us, pulling up a chair without asking. We ate simple food, laughed at silly games, and counted down to midnight. No one had to earn their place. No one had to beg for a seat. As fireworks cracked across the sky, I looked around that small apartment, at faces lit by joy instead of judgment, and thought, we belong. And this time no one gets to take it away.